Welcome back to Bedtime Historian, 9 p.m., where calm history stories each night help you unwind and drift to sleep. Tonight we're heading back tens of thousands of years to a world where the wind was sharp enough to bite and hunger was an uninvited companion. You stand in the half-light of an Ice Age dawn. The air is dry, the snow crust crackles under your boots, and somewhere beyond the frost-rimmed pines, a herd of reindeer exhales steam into the cold. You can almost hear your stomach joining the chorus. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun seeing where my fellow night owls and time travelers are listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind smells faintly of smoke, the thin kind from damp wood, and beneath it, something wilder, animal, ancient. You're part of a small band of hunters who've tracked this herd for days. Sleep comes only in fragments. Hunger never leaves. Out here, every step, every whisper of movement has a purpose. A misplaced sound can send food running into the mist. You crouch low, spear balanced, heart hammering like it's trying to forge heat in your chest. The others move in a half circle, wordless, rehearsed by generations. Nobody wastes breath, nobody wastes anything. When the first reindeer falls, it's not triumph that floods the group, it's relief, the kind that shakes you a little. The ancient world was stingy with mercy. To waste a kill was to mock the odds that spared you. Prehistoric life wasn't an endless buffet of mammoths and autrochs. It was a daily negotiation with starvation. Anthropologists now know that most hunter-gatherer calories came not from dramatic hunts, but from quiet, steady foraging. Seeds, roots, berries. Big game was rare, unpredictable, and sacred. When it came, it was treated like a miracle that might not happen again for months. Imagine dragging a half-ton of meat back through sleet without refrigeration, GPS, or even a good playlist. You'd learn quickly that preservation isn't optional. Waste meant weakness, and weakness meant death. Over time, that practicality hardened into a code. One part survival, one part reverence. To take life was to assume a debt you could never fully repay. So you did the only respectful thing. You used everything. Archaeological sites across Europe tell the same story in layers of bone and ash. Near Dolní Vostanice in the Czech Republic, excavations reveal mammoth ribs arranged like architectural beams, hinting that hunters once lived inside the skeletons of their kills, nature's macabre version of IKEA. Farther north, on tundra once ruled by reindeer, traces of marrow extraction suggest they cracked bones long after meat was gone, scavenging every drop of fat. It's easy from a heated apartment to romanticize this thrift as primitive wisdom. But when your survival depends on calories per hour, wisdom is just necessity with frostbite. Yet the efficiency wasn't only biological, it was emotional. Waste carried guilt. Many Ice Age hunters left offerings beside carcasses, beads, ochre, carved figurines. Tokens that seem to say, thank you, sorry, and please let us find another tomorrow. Modern scholars debate how much of this reverence was religion and how much was ritualized gratitude.
But either way, it kept communities mindful. In a world without surplus, mindfulness wasn't a wellness trend. It was a moral economy. You can almost see it now, a flicker of fire under an open sky, the air thick with fat smoke. The kill lies before the group. A child touches its flank, wide-eyed. An elder murmurs words no longer remembered. Then practical hands get to work, skinning, gutting, slicing, drying. A choreography passed down for millennia. It's brutal and beautiful at once. If you close your eyes, the hiss of the fan beside your bed could almost be that winter wind curling around those ancient figures. And somewhere between the crack of bone and the sigh of snow, the rule was born. Nothing wasted, nothing taken for granted.
The reindeer's body cools quickly in the morning air, steam rising like ghostly threads that twist away into the gray. You kneel beside it, hands trembling not from pity, but from adrenaline and hunger. The others gather in a semicircle, breathing heavily, watching. And before a knife is lifted, before the first cut is made, there is silence. That silence is older than language. It's a pause that stretches across continents and centuries, from Ice Age tundra to African savanna, from the Arctic Sea to the Australian outback. Every culture that hunted to live understood it. This moment, when death's immediacy collides with gratitude. Somewhere around 30,000 years ago, humans began painting animals on cave walls, aurochs, bison, lions, not just for decoration, but as memory, ritual, or plea. Archaeologists argue endlessly about meaning, but it's hard to look at those red ochre shapes flickering in torchlight and not sense devotion. You, standing there, might dip your fingers into pigment made from crushed stone and blood, pressing it to your forehead. The hunt wasn't merely an act of survival. It was a covenant. You whisper thanks, not because you're sentimental, but because the world demands it. The animal's spirit must be acknowledged, or so everyone believes. To kill without gratitude risks cosmic imbalance, and in a world this unpredictable, that's the last thing you want. Cave rituals were part insurance policy, part therapy session. In a Cro-Magnon shelter like Chauvet, there's evidence of burnt offerings, bits of fat tossed into fire, and footprints of children nearby. Imagine the mix of awe and terror those children felt watching flame consume the remains of an animal that fed them. You can almost hear an elder murmuring, "It gave itself to us. We must remember." Anthropologists call this the sacred pact of the hunt. Modern hunters in some indigenous Arctic cultures still echo it. Inuit traditions, for instance, often treat seals as beings who choose to offer themselves. After a successful hunt, hunters return the seal's bladder or bones to the sea so its soul can be reborn. In Siberia, Evenki hunters speak softly to slain elk, assuring them that their bodies will be honored, not wasted. It sounds poetic,
But there's a practical undercurrent. Respecting the animal encouraged restraint. If you viewed a creature as a spirit gift rather than a commodity, you were less likely to overhunt it. Waste became taboo because it invited spiritual consequences, storms, famine, or simply bad luck. Ancient hunters didn't separate the sacred from the sustainable. They were the same rule spoken in two languages. You wipe your hands on snow, staining it red-brown. Around you, the group begins to move again, knives of flint, blades of bone. Each motion is efficient, practiced, but not hurried. Even the cutting has a rhythm, like breathing, like prayer. It's hard to say where faith ends and habit begins. There's a theory that these early rituals shaped empathy itself. By requiring people to thank what they killed, societies may have rewired themselves to feel connection through consumption, a paradox at the core of humanity. You consume life to live, but you remember it as sacred. Maybe that's what separates you from scavengers. Or maybe scavengers just don't have the time for philosophy. One thing scholars still debate is whether cave art was an attempt to magically capture prey, sympathetic magic, or simply to honor it. Some see the overlapping figures as movement studies, the first storyboards in history. Others suggest they were a kind of ecological record, who lived here, who mattered. Either way, they carried meaning deep enough to survive millennia, pigment outlasting language. You sit back as the carcass is portioned, the smell of raw meat mixing with smoke. There's no cheering, no celebration, just focus and quiet joy that tomorrow might still come. And even if it doesn't, tonight everyone will eat. Sometimes, when archaeologists unearth these ancient sites, they find animal bones placed deliberately beside human ones, as if the hunters wanted to be remembered together. Perhaps they saw no divide between species, only between the living and the dead. The pact was mutual. The hunter takes, the hunted gives, and the world turns one more time. Under the red glow of firelight, that truth feels almost soft. You picture the flames licking skyward, carrying whispers and smoke. Maybe they believed the animals heard them. Maybe, in their own way, they were right.
The warmth of the fire fades quickly in the open air. What remains is the scent of blood and smoke, an aroma older than civilization itself. You're still kneeling beside the reindeer's body, but now it's no longer a creature, it's potential. A meal, a tool, a shelter, a story, and every inch of it will serve a purpose. Nothing is left behind. That's not an exaggeration, it's a philosophy. Ancient hunters treated a kill like a treasure chest that just happened to breathe once. The hide, shelter, clothing, rope. The bones, tools and weapons. The tendons, string, bowline, thread. Even the hooves and fat found use. Waste wasn't just frowned upon, it was unthinkable. You watch as the group begins to disassemble the animal. One peels back the hide with practiced precision. Another cracks joints with a hammerstone, while a third collects the organs in a stretched stomach bag. It's a strange sort of industry,
methodical and almost gentle. There's beauty in the logic of it. Archaeologists studying Upper Paleolithic sites often find that the absence of waste is as informative as the presence of tools. Long bones are split cleanly down the middle to extract marrow, the calorie-rich butter of prehistory. Skulls are cracked not for cruelty, but for the brain tissue inside, which was used for tanning hides. Even the animal's intestines were cleaned and stretched to store fat or water. At Star Carr in England, archaeologists uncovered deer skulls fashioned into headdresses, likely used for rituals or camouflage. The antlers were carefully trimmed, smoothed, reshaped, not trophies, but instruments of continuity between hunter and hunted. That's the difference. In this world, using something wasn't desecration, it was communion. If you were there, you'd probably find the process shocking, not because it was cruel, but because it was so thorough. A single animal could sustain a group for weeks, sometimes months. Hides turned into layered toothing, bones sharpened into awls, needles, spear points. Sinew became bowstrings, fat was melted into oil for lamps, and the stomach inflated into a water container. Imagine packing all that into one life, one death. The air hums with quiet purpose. The fire crackles, fat spits, and the hunters move like gears in a watch. There's no argument about who deserves what. Survival has no room for ego. Even the scraps find use, fed to dogs, buried for scavengers, or smoked for bait. Modern field biologists studying Arctic peoples note similar efficiency today among Inuit seal hunters, where even the blood becomes soup and the bones tools. And then there are the quirks that remind you how inventive humans can be when necessity presses close. Some tribes used animal bladders as children's toys, primitive balloons. Others used sinew soaked in fish oil long before toothpaste or mint. It's darkly funny how innovation thrives where comfort doesn't. This kind of thrift wasn't about moral superiority, it was about math. You had no refrigerator, no Amazon Prime delivery, no waste bin. What you couldn't use, you lost. And losing meant hunger, exposure, or worse. Even today, forensic anthropologists debate which bone markings belong to humans and which to scavengers. The lines between deliberate use and desperate survival blur. Did the cut marks on that mammoth rib come from a skilled butcher or a starving wanderer scraping for scraps? It's a quiet argument in academia, but one that hums with empathy, because either way, someone refused to give up. You can almost picture it, the scene at dusk, the reindeer's bones arranged neatly, the hide stretched to dry beside the fire. A child holds a rib like a toy, pretending it's a sword. Someone else hums softly, perhaps a melody no one will ever know again. And above them, a flock of ravens circles, waiting their turn in the great recycling of life. Every motion, every slice, is a declaration that existence itself must be respected through use. Waste isn't just inefficient, it's sacrilege. And while the modern world may toss leftovers without a thought, these ancient hands would have seen that as madness. Somewhere deep in your bones, no pun intended, you understand that logic. The quiet pride of using everything, of letting nothing die in vain. It's a feeling you can't quite name, somewhere between gratitude and defiance. The fire burns lower now. Shadows stretch long across the snow, and the reindeer's spirit if you believe in such things, has already joined the wind. What remains is life, in its simplest arithmetic. Take, use, endure, remember. And so, the night goes on.
By the time morning fades into pale gold, the smell of smoke dominates the camp. It clings to your skin, your hair, even your dreams. The hunt is done, but the real work has only just begun. You watch as they string long slivers of meat across wooden racks, the cuts thin as parchment. Beneath them, a slow fire smolders. No roaring flames, just a lazy column of smoke twisting upward. Someone fans it gently with a piece of hide. This is not cooking. This is preservation. For people without fridges, smoke is salvation. It's chemistry learned by instinct. Heat drives away moisture. Smoke drives away insects. Salt, where it can be found, draws the water out of flesh like a quiet miracle. And in frozen lands, the cold itself becomes a kind of ally. A mammoth cached in permafrost could feed a group all winter. The trick was knowing how to keep it hidden from predators with better noses and fewer ethics. You crouch closer, feeling the warmth lick your fingers. The smell makes your stomach tighten again, but you wait. Patience is its own survival skill. The elders remember when impatience spoiled a whole kill, when rain came early, or flies found their way into the meat. So now, each step is deliberate, almost ceremonial. Across the fire, someone rubs salt into thick haunches, coarse, hand-gathered from riverbeds or traded from other tribes. The salt stings cracked skin, but no one complains. It's worth it. A few pounds of preserved meat can mean the difference between sleeping through the smooth season or starving under it. And then there's the oldest preservation method of all: sunlight. In desert regions, hunters simply stretched strips of flesh across rock faces, letting the heat of the sun do its work. Imagine the patience of that. Days of turning, guarding, fending off scavengers. The first jerky, long before anyone gave it a name. A quirky archaeological find from Jordan's Wadi Fanan shows this exact technique. Evidence of dried gazelle meat wrapped in animal skins, roughly 20,000 years old. Not quite supermarket packaging, but close enough. Even then, humans were learning how to extend a single kill beyond its natural life. You might think it's all meat and muscle, but fat was the true prize. Fat burns, feeds, and shines. Rendered down, it fueled stone lamps through dark nights. Mix it with ash, and you had something resembling soap. It's strangely moving how necessity breeds elegance. When the sun dips low again, you see other tricks unfold. The marrow from earlier, melted into hot broth, then poured over meat to seal it. Skins stuffed with salted organs and hung high in trees, primitive larders where wolves couldn't reach. In colder zones, hunters learned to bury meat in snowbanks lined with moss. The earth itself became their pantry. Some scholars call this the birth of time management. You take the chaos of nature and impose order, one slow-burning fire, one measured cut at a time. Others argue it's the root of civilization itself, planning beyond the present moment. Either way,
It's what separates you from the scavenger's desperate meal. Not everything was purely practical, though. Around the fire, preservation carried its own social rhythm. The smell of smoking meat drew everyone close. Children learned by watching. Stories were told between turns of meat. The process became a lullaby against the endless unknown. If you listen carefully, you can still hear the echoes of those nights, the soft hiss of fat on embers, the crackle of wood, and the laughter of people who had, for once, enough to eat. It's the sound of survival wrapped in gratitude. Even today, something about smoked food stirs that ancient comfort. A campfire hot dog, a piece of grilled fish. It's not just flavor, it's memory. Somewhere in your DNA, a quiet signal fires. We have fire, we have food. We will live another day. And maybe that's why modern humans still gather around barbecues and bonfires. The instinct is older than language, older than agriculture. We're not just cooking, we're remembering. You stretch your hands toward the fire, letting the warmth soak into your bones. The racks of meat sway gently in the breeze, thin curls of smoke climbing toward the stars. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed. Just patience, preservation, and quiet satisfaction. The scent of life continuing through careful hands. By the time twilight rolls over the horizon, the air smells rich with cooked fat and wood smoke. You're tired, soot-streaked, and starving, but tonight there's something better than a full belly waiting, a feast. It starts quietly. A few sparks fly upward as someone tosses another log onto the fire. Children cluster closer, giggling at the shadows their hands make in the flickering light. The meat has been smoking all day, and now the choicest cuts are pulled from the racks. A hush falls as the first strip hisses against the stone plate. In a world without surplus, a feast is both miracle and ritual. Everyone eats together, not because of generosity, but because that's how balance survives. The hunter who killed the reindeer doesn't get to hoard it. Sharing is survival insurance. You feed others today, so they'll feed you tomorrow. Anthropologists call it reciprocal altruism. Early humans just called it common sense. If a single person tried to hoard meat, the rest of the group would quietly make sure they didn't last long enough to try again. After all, it's hard to enjoy your private stash when 40 hungry eyes are watching you by firelight. You can almost taste it, the smoky sweetness of roasted fat, the chew of sinew, the earthy flavor of bone broth simmering in a hide-lined pit. People eat slowly, deliberately, savoring every bite. A child chews marrow from a bone twice his arm's length. A woman wipes grease on her fur cloak, smiling. Laughter rises. The air hums with relief. Even in harsh environments, humans found ways to turn eating into meaning. Feasting wasn't gluttony, it was gratitude. It said, we survived another day together. It was the rhythm that bound tribes long before written law. Across millennia, the same logic echoed. Among the San of southern Africa, successful hunters distributed meat by ritual formula. The one who shot the animal received the least glory. Instead, he deflected praise, saying it was a small kill, thin and weak. A clever kind of humility that kept envy and violence at bay. You picture it now, the flickering glow painting faces in bronze and gold, each one a living link in an unbroken chain of survival. The fire crackles, embers drifting like fireflies toward the cold stars. Somewhere in the dark, wolves watch, patient and hungry, but even they respect the circle of flame. Not all meat is eaten tonight. Some is set aside for the elderly who couldn't join the hunt, or hidden in animal skins for the next journey. Every scrap has purpose. Nothing goes to waste, not even the bones, which will be burned to ash or shaped into tools tomorrow. In this way, the feast becomes a blueprint for early civilization. Cooperation enforced not by rulers or walls, but by necessity and trust. Food was power, but shared food was peace. There's a certain tenderness in the chaos. Someone hums a tune, tapping a rhythm on a hollow skull drum. The sound mingles with the wind. A young hunter passes a slice of meat to his rival. For tonight, rivalry is forgotten. It's hard to hate someone when you're chewing beside them under the same stars. That's how empathy grows, around firelight, not in classrooms. Anthropologists have long suspected that communal eating shaped not just human culture, but the human mind. It taught patience, empathy, fairness, maybe even love. As you watch, someone raises a bone cup of broth, murmuring words half prayer, half toast. May the hunt return what it takes. The group repeats it softly. The fire pops. It's easy to think of these people as primitive, but their understanding of balance was profound. To them, eating wasn't consumption, it was participation in an endless cycle. You take, you give, you thank, you wait. The feast isn't the end of the kill, it's the transformation into memory and kinship. You lean back, full and drowsy. The firelight dances in your eyes. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of roasted meat and ancient gratitude. For one perfect moment, there is no fear, no hunger, no waste, only warmth, community, and the quiet crackle of life continuing. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. But tonight, you rest, belly warm, mind at peace, part of a story as old as fire itself.
When dawn returns, pale and hesitant, the fire has burned to a low whisper. The feast's remains lie scattered, charred bones, soot-blackened stones, scraps of hide. You'd think it looks like waste, but to the ancient mind, this is the beginning of creation. You stir the ashes with a stick and find that nearly nothing is truly left behind. A bone here will be sharpened into a needle, that rib a scraper for hides. Even the blackened marrow bones will be cracked open, their centers boiled for glue. Every remnant will find a second life. This is where death becomes invention. You sit beside an older hunter who is already working. His hands are steady, his knife of flint worn smooth at the edges. He splits a length of antler, then hammers it carefully with a rounded stone. A fragment breaks free.
With rhythmic strokes, he shapes it into a point, the embryo of a spearhead. You can hear the soft music of utility being born. Across the camp, others are busy in their own quiet genius. One strips sinew from the animal's leg, stretching it between wooden pegs until it dries into a pale, flexible thread. Another rubs a tooth against rock, drilling a tiny hole through its root. Soon it'll hang from a cord, clinking softly against the chest of its wearer. Not vanity, but remembrance. Anthropologists have always marveled at how early humans refused to separate function from beauty. Tools were rarely just tools. They were expressions of gratitude, identity, even love. In Sungir, Russia, a 30,000-year-old burial revealed a child laid to rest with mammoth ivory beads, over 3,000 of them, each carved by hand. A lifetime of work, gifted to one who could no longer use them. It seems paradoxical, doesn't it? A society so efficient, yet so sentimental. They used every part of the kill because it was practical, and also because it was sacred. You pick up a shard of bone, turning it in your fingers. It's smooth, light, and surprisingly warm from the sun. The elder gestures for you to try. You scrape the edge along a hide, watching the fur peel away in curls. It feels like writing a word the earth already knows. That's when you notice the pattern in the work around you, a circle of transformation. Flesh becomes food, bones become blades, sinew becomes cord. Waste isn't waste, it's raw potential. Modern archaeologists sometimes call this total utilization, a term that sounds clinical until you realize it's just reverence disguised as efficiency. In some cultures, that reverence extended far beyond the workshop. Inuit carvers, for example, believed that tools made from an animal's bones retained part of its spirit. Using them properly honored that spirit. Using them carelessly invited misfortune. Ancient Siberian hunters said the same of ivory and antler. When you shaped it well, the animal's ghost guided your hand. It's easy to smile at such superstition, but maybe they were on to something. After all, we still talk to our tools. We give names to ships, curse our laptops, praise a good knife. Maybe we've never stopped believing that the objects we make can feel something of us. A small laugh ripples through the camp when a young hunter accidentally snaps a bone he was carving. He winces, mutters something about offending the spirit. The elder pats his shoulder, hands him another piece, and says nothing. The lesson is wordless but clear. Patience, precision, and respect are the only acceptable apologies. As the day brightens, the camp transforms again. Piles of clean hides flutter in the wind. Antler tips gleam like ivory against the dirt. Tools
ornaments and weapons grow out of what was once an animal, and now, in a strange way, part of the tribe. When the group moves on, there will almost be no trace left behind, no waste heap, no rotting carcass, no insult to the land. The reindeer will live on in 100 forms, in warmth, in art, in motion. You glance down at your hands, still smelling faintly of smoke and bone. It's impossible not to feel the weight of continuity, how even now, thousands of years later, our phones, our homes, our instruments are echoes of that same instinct to take what the world offers and shape it carefully, gratefully, into something new. The wind rises, carrying the faint jingle of bone beads and the rhythmic tapping of antler on stone. It's not noise, it's a language, the oldest kind, telling you that creation always begins with the courage not to waste.
The fire is gone now, its embers smothered beneath the gray morning frost. What remains is a ring of footprints and the faint musk of animal oil on the air. The camp looks deserted, and yet life still stirs here. Quiet, unseen life. You notice it first in the dirt. Beetles, small and glinting, crawl toward the forgotten scraps, bits of sinew too tough to chew, shreds of hide clinging to bone. A few crows hop in from the trees, their black eyes alert. Before long, the air hums with flies. It seems waste has finally arrived, but it hasn't. It's simply being passed along. Even what the hunters can't use becomes fuel for someone else's survival. Nature has no landfill. Every fragment finds its place. The beetles feast, the birds snatch morsels, dropping bones that splinter into mineral-rich shards. A wolf skulks at the edge of the clearing, sniffing the wind. When night falls again, it will carry off what little remains, dragging the last threads of the kill back into the forest. This too is part of the ritual, the unseen recycling chain. Ancient hunters didn't just coexist with scavengers, they relied on them. In tundra environments, where the cold preserved remains for months, predators like wolves or foxes kept campsites from becoming disease traps. In turn, those predators thrived, keeping herds strong by thinning the weak. It's a brutal harmony, but a perfect one. Archaeologists at Pleistocene kill sites often find evidence of this partnership. Bones gnawed by both humans and hyenas, layers of ash and claw marks woven together. Modern researchers still debate whether early humans competed with scavengers or quietly collaborated. Some even suggest humans deliberately left leftovers near dens, ensuring that wolves stayed close. those same wolves over generations grew friendlier. Eventually, they moved closer to the firelight and became dogs. So maybe the first pet wasn't just companionship, it was ecological balance disguised as friendship. Waste turned into loyalty. You kneel, tracing a line in the dirt where the blood has darkened it. The ground is already feeding on it, pulling nutrients down into the roots of frost-bitten grasses. Months from now, when the snow melts, those grasses will sprout richer and taller. Deer will return to feed there. The circle tightens. The reindeer's death becomes the next herd's life. There's a kind of quiet poetry in that, the kind modern people have almost forgotten. We build landfills, not ecosystems. We think of waste as disappearance, not transformation. But to your ancient ancestors, decomposition wasn't decay, it was completion. You can almost smell it, the rich, earthy sweetness of rotting leaves mixed with the last hint of smoke. It's not unpleasant, it's grounding. Life returning to where it came from. In some ancient belief systems, this process was personified. The Egyptians, much later, called it Khepri, the scarab god who rolled the sun across the sky, inspired by beetles rolling dung through the desert. To them, even the lowliest insect became divine, a symbol of renewal. You imagine Paleolithic minds feeling something similar, even if they had no word for it. Watching scavengers work might have seemed like a small resurrection. Not every debate in archaeology revolves around bone tools or fire pits. Some scholars spend their entire careers trying to understand attitude. Did prehistoric people consciously view decay as sacred? Did they see scavengers as helpers or just opportunists? The evidence can't answer, but the pattern of behavior can. If you treat the earth gently enough that it reuses everything you touch, that's reverence in practice, not belief. You look up, watching the sky fade into silver. The birds have done their work. The insects hum like a low chant. The wolves have left paw prints near the bones, already filling with wind-blown snow. Soon, even those will vanish. In the end, the only true waste is forgetting the lesson that life feeds on life, and gratitude is measured not in words, but in how lightly you leave your mark behind. As you stand, the air carries the faint echo of what once was. A reindeer's breath, a hunter's whisper, a beetle's slow triumph. You can almost hear the planet exhale, satisfied. Nothing lost, everything used.
The land changes beneath your feet. Snow gives way to ice, ice to water, water to salt wind and endless white horizons. You are far north now, where the cold hums like a living thing, and breath freezes before it leaves your lips. Here, waste isn't just foolish, it's fatal. You trudge across the frozen coast beside a small group of hunters wrapped in seal hides. The world seems silent, but it's listening. Every crunch of snow echoes from miles, every movement watched by ravens and seals alike. These are the ice hunters, the people who learn to live where almost nothing grows, and yet everything matters. You stop when they stop. One kneels and brushes frost from the snow, revealing a breathing hole, a narrow dark slit in the white. Beneath it, a seal surfaces to breathe. The hunter waits, motionless. The air between life and death stretches thin. Then, a quick thrust. Bone-tipped spear. One clean strike. The seal doesn't even cry out. The group moves fast. Within minutes, the animal is pulled up, blood steaming in the cold air. But the reverence is the same as always, perhaps even deeper here, where survival dances on the edge of extinction. The hunters murmur softly, touching the animal's head, pressing snow over its eyes. A debt is acknowledged. You might think that one seal isn't much, but here it's everything. Meat for food, fat for light, hide for clothing, bone for tools, sinew for stitching. An entire economy built around respect for a single creature. When anthropologists study ancient Arctic sites, like those of the Dorset and Thule peoples, they find astonishing signs of planning. Seal bones neatly sorted by size and purpose. Whale ribs used as roof beams for snoo houses. Fish oil lamps carved from soapstone, their wicks made from moss soaked in fat. Even the sea ice becomes part of the system, a cold larder from months-long preservation. These weren't desperate improvisations, they were symphonies of survival. Imagine this, a winter wind battering a shelter made of snow blocks. Inside, the air glows faintly from the tiny flame of a blubber lamp. The flame wavers, but never dies. Around it, the family eats seal soup, warm and oily, each sip carrying the heat of life reclaimed from the sea. Children chew strips of dried fish, while the elders mend clothing with bone needles so fine they could pass through silk. Outside, the world howls, but inside, there's calm. That calm was earned through mastery of waste. To waste even a mouthful of fat was to risk darkness. To spill too much oil was to freeze before morning. Among some Arctic cultures, to burn food in the fire was considered an offense against the spirit world, not because of superstition alone, but because the universe punished carelessness with cold. Every decision mattered. If you killed more than you could preserve, the spirits might turn away the herds. If you hunted without gratitude, the ice might crack beneath your feet. It's easy to see these as metaphors, but for ancient hunters, they were survival rules coded into faith. There's a story told by Inuit elders about Sedna, the sea mother. She controls all sea creatures, seals, whales, fish, and releases them only to those who treat their gifts with care. If humans waste, she withholds. It's myth as moral contract, and it worked, a divine reinforcement of ecology. You glance around the frozen camp. The hunters have begun to divide the seal. Fat is sliced into cubes, rendered into oil. The hide is pegged flat on the ice, soon to become boots or a tent cover. Nothing spills. Even the blood is scooped into snow to be dried and stored. Children chew on pieces of frozen skin as snacks. Every action is practiced, ritual, sacred. Modern scientists studying Arctic diets marvel at how efficient these people were. Every nutrient accounted for, every calorie used. Their bones show little sign of malnutrition, proof that precision and gratitude can outwit even the most hostile landscape. But perhaps the most impressive thing isn't what they did, but how they thought. For them, survival wasn't about conquest. It was about rhythm, moving with the seasons, following the migration, taking only what could be used. Hunters planned entire routes around the return of seals, caribou, and whales, as though the world itself were a heartbeat they'd learned to sync with. When they rested at night, they often sang to the animals they had taken, voices soft and steady under the aurora. They said, "We will not waste you. We remember." You lie back on the snow, the stars glittering like cold fire above. Somewhere out there, wolves are hunting too, ravens waiting to clean what's left. The wind carries a whisper that feels like an answer. The land, the animal, the hunter, all keeping score, all keeping balance. And as the tiny flame in the blubber lamp flickers on your eyelids, you understand what they knew so long ago. To waste nothing is not just survival, it's grace.
When the snows finally loosen their grip, the world opens into motion again. The vast sunburned plains of Africa, where the air trembles with heat and scent. You're far from the ice now. The ground is dry beneath your feet, dust rising in little puffs with every step. The wind smells of grass and sweat and the faint copper tang of distance. Here, the hunters don't chase seals or mammoths. They chase shadows. Antelope, gazelle, sometimes zebra. Creatures so swift that even the word hunt feels generous. It's a dance, a test of stamina, and most of all, timing. Because out here, waste isn't measured in what you throw away, but in how much you take too soon. You follow a band of hunters across the savannah. Their spears are light, their strides long and measured. They know the rhythm of this land better than any map could teach them. When the herds migrate, when the rains come, when the grass turns brittle underfoot. Hunting isn't guesswork, it's scheduling. Miss the moment, and the entire tribe goes hungry. The sky shimmers with heat, and mirages ripple across the horizon. You can see antelope in the distance, faint shapes flickering through the haze. The hunters speak little, saving breath, but you can sense their focus. Every gesture, every pause is calculation. When they move, it's patient and deliberate, persistence hunting, the ancient technique that once defined humanity. You don't sprint your prey into submission, you outlast it. Step by step, you keep pace as it flees, tracking through dust and thorn.
The animal overheats long before you do. Hours pass. Then one careful throw of a spear, and the chase ends. You'd think the hard part is over, but the real challenge begins now. Meat spoils fast in this heat. Within hours, the sun can turn abundance into ruin. So the tribe moves quickly, carving the carcass where it fell. Hides are stretched between branches. Meat is cut into thin ribbons and hung in the wind. Some chew raw slices to stave off thirst. Blood is caught in gourds. Nothing drips onto the ground without purpose. Anthropologists studying the Hadza and San people today still witness echoes of this rhythm. Hunters reading wind direction by scent, slicing meat with stone flakes finer than razors, drying it under makeshift shelters of leaves. Even the bones have planned destinies, broken open for marrow, or burned later for ash used to polish tools. In the background, vultures circle, impatient accountants of the savannah. They wait, respectfully distant, until the hunters leave. It's an old agreement, signed in dust and instinct. When humans move on, the scavengers descend, stripping what's left clean. Waste is an illusion. Everything feeds something. But beyond the practical lies something deeper, an understanding that efficiency equals respect. Early African hunters developed what some scholars now call the Savannah Efficiency Code, an unwritten rule that every resource must loop back into life. Take too much and the herd won't return. Leave too little for the scavengers, and the scavengers might turn on you. Harmony wasn't a luxury, it was survival mathematics. There's evidence from Olduvai Gorge, the cradle of humankind, showing that early Homo erectus carried selected bones miles away from kill sites. Why? Possibly to crack them later for marrow, but maybe also as part of deliberate territory marking. Every choice served more than one purpose: nourishment, communication, preservation. You glance up at the sun. It's descending now, bleeding orange over the plains. The group finishes their work, stacking the dried meat carefully, wrapping it in hides. They leave nothing that won't regenerate. The ground looks nearly untouched, save for a dark patch of dust where the animal fell. Within days, the wind will erase even that. At dusk, the hunters sit in a circle, sharing strips of the meat they worked so hard to save. Someone hums a rhythm, the steady cadence of walking feet, of patience, of earned reward. A child asks why they don't kill more while the herds are near. The elder smiles faintly and says, "Because the land must breathe too." It's an idea that feels startlingly modern. Ecological balance as moral duty. But they didn't need the vocabulary for it. They lived it. In the savannah, greed and waste were simply too expensive to afford. As night falls, the plains come alive again. Hyenas laugh in the distance. Fireflies blink like tiny embers among the grass. The hunters drift into sleep beneath a vast bowl of stars. The wind whispers over their resting forms, carrying the scent of smoke, blood, and grass. Tomorrow they'll rise before dawn and begin again, following the wind, reading the herds, moving always in rhythm with the living world. You close your eyes, the sound of cicadas buzzing in your ears. It's easy to imagine how, even now, some part of you still remembers this feeling, the calm certainty that to waste nothing is to belong everywhere.
The night settles deep and soft over the savannah. Stars spill across the sky like 1,000 silent campfires. The air cools, and in the faint blue light before dawn, you hear the tribe begin to stir. The fire crackles back to life, and an elder hums a low tune, not a song of hunger or hunting this time, but one of thanks. The rhythm is slow, almost like breathing. Each line acknowledges the animal that gave its life, the land that held it, and the people who will live because of it. This isn't performance, it's accounting, spiritual bookkeeping for the debt of existence. Across countless cultures, this same instinct has echoed. From the frozen seas of the Arctic to the jungles of the Amazon, ancient hunters shared a single moral law: take life only with gratitude and waste nothing of the gift. You sit near the elder as he scatters a handful of ash into the wind. The remains of bone burned to powder. It drifts upward, faint as snow, so it can find its way back, he murmurs. You don't need to ask where. The gesture explains itself. The earth lent life. The earth reclaims it. The sacred debt of the hunt wasn't superstition. It was philosophy disguised as necessity. Hunters saw themselves not as conquerors of nature, but as participants in a cycle too vast to control. Killing wasn't victory, it was permission. You could only take what you honored. Among the Inuit, that idea took shape in ritual. After a seal was killed, its soul was soothed with fresh water poured into its mouth, a final kindness to quench its spirit's thirst. In the Great Plains, Lakota hunters left tobacco offerings beside bison carcasses, their smoke rising like prayers. Aboriginal Australians sang the song lines of the animals they hunted, mapping spirit paths across the desert, ensuring that each creature's story continued even in death. Modern scholars debate how much of this reverence was faith and how much was practical psychology, a way to manage the guilt of survival. But guilt itself implies empathy, and empathy is what made humans not just survivors, but stewards. You glance at your own hands, still streaked faintly with the red of yesterday's kill. The blood has dried, but the thought lingers. You've taken something you can't return. The elder notices your silence and smiles, as if reading your mind. You don't own what you eat, he says softly. You borrow it. The fire pops, sending sparks spinning upward. One lands on your sleeve and dies there, a tiny life gone without ceremony. You brush it away and think how small the difference is between flame and flesh, between taking and giving. Later that day, the tribe packs up camp. They move lightly, leaving little trace, footprints that wind will erase, ashes that melt into soil. But before they go, the elder leads them in one last act. They gather a few small bones from the feast and bury them under a cairn of stones. It's not a grave, not exactly. It's a promise. The cairn marks gratitude, a reminder that even in taking,
one must remember to return. When archaeologists find these small stone piles centuries later, they often puzzle over their meaning. Offerings? Boundary markers? Shrines? Maybe all three. What matters isn't definition, but devotion. You walk behind the group as they depart. The savannah hums with life again, insects buzzing, birds calling, distant shapes moving through the grass. You realize this isn't the world of scarcity it first seemed. It's the world of balance. Everything takes, everything gives. That understanding runs deeper than ritual. It shapes how people move, how they build, even how they dream. For these hunters, the boundary between sacred and mundane doesn't exist. Cooking meat, cleaning bones, singing thanks, it's all prayer. And maybe that's what modern humanity has forgotten, that respect doesn't require temples, only awareness. The elder's voice drifts on the wind behind you. To live without waste is to live without fear. You repeat it quietly, the words settling somewhere deep inside, where memory and instinct meet. The sun climbs higher. The tribe disappears into the waving grass. The cairn of stones gleams faintly, the buried bones beneath already returning to dust. You turn once more to the horizon, feeling the warmth of morning on your face. Somewhere ahead waits another hunt, another promise, another chance to remember that survival, at its purest, is gratitude in motion.
But not every hunt ended in balance. There were times when the rhythm faltered, when hunger grew faster than wisdom, and gratitude gave way to greed. Even the most careful traditions couldn't always protect against abundance. And abundance, ironically, was often the beginning of waste. You stand now on a different plane, one buried beneath millennia of dust and bones. The sky is dry, the wind bitter. This is where the great beasts fell, mammoths, giant ground sloths, woolly rhinos, the giants of the Ice Age. Once they ruled continents. Then, within a few thousand years of humanity's spread, they were gone. Archaeologists call it the Pleistocene overkill. It's a phrase that sounds clinical, but it describes a tragedy too vast for words. When early hunters arrived in new lands, they brought skill, cooperation, and tools sharper than anything the megafauna had ever faced. At first, it must have felt like an endless feast, herds so large you could walk for days and never leave them. Meat, hides, ivory, all there for the taking. You can almost hear the stampede, a thunder of hooves across frozen grass, spears whistling through the air, shouts echoing between cliffs. The hunters' success was spectacular, maybe too spectacular. They killed faster than the herds could recover. What began as survival became excess. Some scholars argue the climate was the real culprit: warming earth, melting ice, collapsing habitats. Others say humans were only the final nudge, but the pattern is unmistakable. Wherever humans went, the great beasts vanished soon after. In Australia, Diprotodon and giant kangaroos disappeared. In North America, mammoths and mastodons fell silent. Even islands weren't spared.
On Wrangel Island, the last mammoths dwindled to a few lonely hundred, their bones bleaching in the Arctic sun. You crouch beside one of those bones, its surface still etched with cut marks from stone tools. It's a reminder, elegant, haunting, undeniable, that waste can hide inside success. For the hunters of that age, it may not have felt like waste at all. When an animal as massive as a mammoth fell, it could feed an entire community for weeks. Yet once the easy prey vanished, the price became clear. Food grew scarcer, migrations longer, survival harder. The very efficiency that had once saved them now threatened them. It's one of history's cruelest ironies, mastery over nature leading straight to dependence on it. The first ecological misstep written not in laws or ledgers, but in bones. And even in that loss, stories tried to mend the break. Some ancient traditions began to speak of offended spirits, the animal ancestors retreating from a disrespectful world. It was myth as moral correction, a way of saying, we forgot our pact. In Siberian folklore, the mammoth became a creature that lived underground, punished for revealing itself to greedy humans. In Native American oral histories, the great buffalo disappeared because people took without asking. The details change, but the ache remains. These tales aren't guilt, they're grief. Standing here, you realize something profound. The lesson of never waste a kill wasn't just about efficiency, it was about memory. The recognition that every mistake leaves a ghost. The land remembers. The bones remember. Modern archaeologists still debate whether the overkill hypothesis is overstated, whether disease, ice melt, or fire played a greater role. But the emotional truth is the same. Once the balance is broken, it's almost impossible to restore. You imagine a final camp, a last mammoth surrounded by tired hunters, its body steaming in the cold. They would have feasted, yes, but maybe deep down they knew it was a farewell. Maybe that's why so many ancient sites show signs of ritual. Beads scattered near bones, ochre painted on tusks. A desperate gesture of apology, whispered too late. The wind blows dust over the field of fossils. A broken spear point gleams faintly in the sun, half buried beside a rib the size of a tree. You pick it up, feeling the weight of both triumph and regret. Even now, thousands of years later, the same dilemma hums beneath every supermarket aisle, every factory farm, every landfill. The echo of the first great mistake. And as the dust drifts across those ancient remains, you can almost hear the warning in the silence. Take what you need, honor what you take, and remember, abundance without restraint is the cruelest famine of all.
The wind still whispers through the plain of bones long after you leave it. It carries the smell of dust, the sigh of time, and somewhere in that sound is the faint scratching of another kind. Tools against bone, questions against silence. Because even now, the past refuses to give up all its secrets. You find yourself standing in the middle of an excavation site, a shallow pit cut into ochre earth. A team of archaeologists works quietly around you, brushes and trowels moving with reverence. At your feet, ancient bones lie scattered, some marked by sharp cuts, others by tooth grooves. Which came first, the hunter's blade or the scavenger's bite? It's one of prehistory's most enduring debates, and one that says as much about us as it does about them. Did early humans truly master the hunt, or were they opportunistic scavengers, arriving late to the kill and taking what lions or hyenas left behind? You crouch, brushing soil from a fragment of rib. Under the microscope, the truth hides in microscopic ridges. A clean V-shaped cut means flint. A rough U means tooth. Sometimes both overlap, layered like two signatures on one contract. Nature and humanity negotiating ownership of the same meal. At sites like Olduvai Gorge, the evidence seems to argue both ways. Some carcasses show signs of precision butchery, deliberate dismemberment, marrow extraction, careful planning. Others look chaotic, gnawed by teeth before any tool touched them. Scholars still argue across journals and continents. Was humankind the hunter or merely the world's cleverest scavenger? You smile a little. Maybe the answer is both. Maybe the distinction never mattered to those who lived it. Whether you struck the killing blow or found the leftovers, the rule remained the same. Never waste a kill. Imagine it, 2 million years ago. A small band of early humans approaches a half-eaten zebra. Lions have moved on, bellies full. The air hums with flies. The hunters, armed with sharp stones, work quickly. They slice meat from bone, crack open femurs for marrow, scoop what's left before hyenas return. It's not noble or dramatic, just efficient, ingenious, a kind of daring humility. Modern researchers often point out that this behavior might have been the spark of civilization itself. Learning to strip and store what predators left behind demanded cooperation, planning, even empathy. You couldn't do it alone. You needed watchmen for lions, cutters for meat, carriers for bundles. Waste less, live longer. Live longer, think better. In a strange twist, scavenging, the act of taking leftovers, might have been the birthplace of intelligence. But the argument isn't over. In one camp, the power-scavenging theorists claim humans used tools and fire to chase predators off fresh kills, turning the tables on stronger beasts. In the other, the passive scavenging camp imagines us as patient opportunists moving in after everyone else. Both sides hold fragments of truth, like bones chewed by time. Yet what's clear, no matter how the debate shifts, is that nothing went to waste. Even the carcasses scavenged after predators had moved on were used to their limit. Blood, bone, hide, tendon, stripped, boiled, scraped, and reused until the land offered nothing more. You glance at one of the archaeologists beside you, sweat glinting on her temple. You ask, "Why do you think they bothered?" She doesn't look up from her brush. She says simply, "Because they couldn't afford not to." That sentence lingers. Couldn't afford not to. It feels both practical and sacred. When you step back from the pit, the sun's low, casting long shadows over the bones. You realize how much of human identity has been built on this single principle: to use what exists, to make meaning from leftovers, to find purpose in fragments. Later, as dusk creeps in, the campfire crackles beside the excavation tent. Someone roasts a bit of dried meat. The air smells almost the same as it did 50,000 years ago. Salt, smoke, and patience. You sit quietly, the warmth on your hands, watching ash drift upward like memory made visible.
It occurs to you that archaeology itself is a kind of scavenging, finding the remains of what's gone, refusing to waste the stories that time left behind. The scientists here aren't so different from the first hunters. Both kneel in the dirt. Both learn from bones. Both try, in their own way, to ensure that nothing, not even a single life, a single mistake, disappears without purpose. And maybe that's the truest definition of humanity. We are the species that hates waste, not just of food, but of meaning. We use every scrap of animal, of time, of memory, until the past itself is clean.
The world has changed again. The sound of stone against bone fades, replaced by the low hum of insects in wheat fields. Smoke no longer rises from campfires, but from hearths built of mud and clay. You can smell it, the scent of earth and grain, and the faint sweetness of domesticated animals grazing nearby. The hunters have become farmers. You stand at the edge of a small Neolithic village, watching a man threshing barley with a curved wooden tool. His hands move with the same rhythm that once shaped spears and scrapers. The muscles remember what the mind has redefined. The hunt has not ended. It has simply shifted. Now the prey is still, the kill is slow, and the debt is the same. The idea of waste still rules here. Only now it governs the harvest. Every kernel is precious, every stalk repurposed. Grain husks feed goats, straw becomes roofing, dung fuels fire. And when an animal dies, its meat is divided, its hide tanned, its bones turned to plow handles. The old instinct to use everything has been reborn as agriculture's quiet conscience. You can almost feel the continuity, the echo of 1,000 generations who once tracked herds across frozen plains, now guiding oxen through furrows. They've traded spears for sickles, but their hands move with the same reverence. At dawn, the village gathers for something that looks suspiciously like a hunt's conclusion, a feast. Bread instead of meat, beer instead of blood. The people thank the land instead of the animal, but the words are the same. Gratitude is simply wearing a new face. Across the ancient world, this gratitude evolved into ritual. In Mesopotamia, farmers poured the first drops of ale onto the ground, an offering to the earth's spirit. In Egypt, the first sheaf of wheat was cut in silence, a gesture of thanks to Osiris, Lord of the harvest. In Mesoamerica, maize was treated as divine flesh. And in the Mediterranean, the Greeks offered libations to Demeter before reaping, a memory of the hunt transposed into the rhythm of sowing and harvest. Even in prehistory, people seemed to know that taking life, whether animal or plant, demanded acknowledgement. Waste in any form was an insult to creation. You walk through the village and see it everywhere. Clay jars filled with grain sealed against pests, root vegetables buried deep in cool pits, fat stored in earthen pots. And yet, even with these new technologies, waste still stalks them like a shadow. A spoiled batch of grain could mean famine. A drought could undo months of labor. So they learned to diversify, to save, to plan, to trade.
the same survival instincts dressed in civilization's new clothes. But something else is changing too, something deeper. With surplus comes storage, and with storage comes power. Those who control the grain begin to control the people. The communal sharing of the feast gives way to rationing, to hierarchy, to law. The pact of the hunt becomes the ledger of the harvest. Still, the spirit of thrift lingers. You see it in the way a mother shapes leftover dough into small cakes for children, in the way a potter recycles broken shards into temper for new clay, in the way a herder uses every drop of milk, every tuft of wool. Humanity, for all its progress, hasn't forgotten the rule written in marrow and firelight: nothing wasted, nothing taken for granted. There's a curious theory among anthropologists that farming didn't erase hunter values, it refined them. The old use everything code became the foundation of domestic economy. Even our idioms still remember it. Make hay while the sun shines. Waste not, want not. At sunset, the villagers light torches and gather in the square. The air smells of baked bread and burning straw. Someone begins a song, not about animals this time, but about the earth itself. The refrain is simple, ancient. We give back what we take. You realize that these rituals aren't just superstition, they're psychological maintenance. The act of giving thanks keeps greed at bay, just as it once did on the plains. When the song ends, the people eat, laugh, and rest under a full moon. In the morning, they'll return to their fields, their routines, their careful management of life's fragile balance. And somewhere beneath their feet, buried in the soil, are the bones of animals they once hunted, tools turned to fossils, memories turned to minerals. The earth is absorbing everything again, recycling even the lessons. The hunters may have settled, but the pact remains intact. The debt continues, generation after generation, to take only what you can use and to use it with respect. Because whether you call it hunting or farming, survival has always been an act of remembering, and gratitude the quiet antidote to waste.
The centuries drift forward like wind over grass. Villages turn into towns, towns into cities. Walls rise. Trade routes stretch like veins across the continents. And humanity, once ruled by hunger, learns to produce more than it consumes. But even in this age of plenty, the old memory of thrift still hums beneath the noise. You find yourself now in a much later world. Iron knives, woven fabrics, written words. Yet here and there, on the fringes of empire and civilization, the ancient code still lives. You see it in the nomads who roam the steppes, in the shepherds who move their flocks with the seasons, and in a new kind of wanderer, the survivalist. He moves through the wilderness with almost prehistoric discipline. No wasted motion, no unnecessary possessions. He carries a blade, a pot, a fire striker, and an instinct that feels older than civilization itself. You watch him skin a rabbit, his gestures as clean and purposeful as those of the Ice Age hunters you once stood beside. The smell of wood smoke, the faint hiss of fat dripping into flame, it could be 10,000 years ago. That's the strange thing about survival. The more modern the world becomes, the older the skills seem. Bushcraft experts, soldiers, mountaineers, all of them trace invisible lines back to the same roots. Every knot tied, every fire lit, every ration packed whispers the same rule: waste nothing. In training manuals and field guides, that rule hides behind phrases like resource efficiency or energy conservation. But strip away the jargon and it's pure prehistory. The soldier reuses his spent casings. The backpacker melts snow in the same cup used for coffee. The off-grid farmer composts everything, turning leftovers into life again. Even in cities, the echo persists. Minimalists speak of only owning what you need. Environmentalists talk of zero waste. Survivalists call it sustainability. But underneath, it's the same primal arithmetic that guided hunters through the Ice Age. The understanding that luxury is temporary, but waste is forever. You see this most clearly in the places where comfort has collapsed. In the aftermath of storms, wars, or blackouts, people rediscover the efficiency their ancestors never forgot. They boil water on makeshift stoves, salvage clothing, ration supplies. The veneer of abundance cracks, and beneath it waits the same old wisdom, quiet, patient, indispensable. It's almost funny how modern humans with satellites and smartphones still turn instinctively back to those ancient habits the moment the lights go out. You remember those Ice Age fires? The circle of faces glowing orange, the smell of fat and smoke, the calm focus of hands that knew exactly what to do? We are still them, only our tools have changed. And yet there's another side to this rediscovery. For some, it's not necessity, but nostalgia. A growing number of people seek out survival training, wilderness therapy, minimalist living, not because they must, but because something inside them hungers for that old rhythm. They want to feel the satisfaction of using everything, of living deliberately, of being part of the world instead of insulated from it. You think of a group camping deep in the forest today. No Wi-Fi, no electricity. They cook over fire, scrape pans clean with sticks, watch sparks rise into the night. When they sleep, it's not comfort they feel, but clarity, a kind of peace the modern world forgot how to sell. And perhaps that's the point. The ancient rule wasn't just about survival, it was about sanity. To waste nothing is to pay attention. To pay attention is to belong. Even the military understands this truth. Soldiers on long missions know that waste isn't just inefficient, it's dangerous. A single discarded ration wrapper can reveal the position. A forgotten tool can mean death. So they pack light, repurpose everything, and learn to live on what they carry. The discipline of thrift becomes a kind of reverence. In survival schools, instructors still quote a version of the same advice Ice Age elders once gave. The more you know,
the less you need. It sounds modern, but it's ancient at heart. You lie back beside the small campfire of the modern wanderer. The night sky looks the same as it did 10,000 years ago. Cold, clear, infinite. Somewhere a fox cries in the dark. The fire snaps softly, the same lullaby it sang to mammoth hunters, seal catchers, and reindeer chasers. It's humbling, isn't it? For all our technology, the truest comfort still comes from the simplest act, using what we have well, wasting nothing, honoring what sustains us. The tools evolve, but the hands that hold them remember. And so the cycle continues. Ancient thrift reborn as modern wisdom, the whisper of the hunter surviving in the hum of solar panels, compost bins, and quiet forests. Because the truth is timeless. When you waste nothing, you lose nothing, not even your place in the long story of being human. And now the world around you hums with neon and noise. The firelight has become fluorescent. The forests that once cradled hunters have turned to suburbs, highways, and shelves stacked high with plenty. But beneath all of it, beneath the buzz of lights, beneath the clatter of checkout counters, something ancient still breathes. You see it when someone pauses before throwing away a meal, when a craftsman sharpens a blade until it gleams again, when a farmer kneels to check the soil after rain. These are fragments of the same instinct that once guided hands slick with blood and snow, the refusal to waste life. In supermarkets, we wrap food in plastic instead of hide. We buy, store, forget, discard, each step cushioned by abundance that would have stunned our ancestors. But sometimes, in the quiet hours, you can almost feel them watching. The Ice Age hunter beside the glowing freezer section, the desert nomad in the aisle of bottled water, the seal catcher standing silently by the rows of fish packed in ice. They'd be amazed by our plenty, yes, but perhaps also puzzled by our carelessness, because they knew something we've nearly forgotten, that gratitude is the truest form of intelligence. And yet it's not gone. The memory of thrift, the muscle of mindfulness still twitches beneath modern comfort. You see it in people who compost, who mend, who reuse. You see it in communities that feed the hungry from surplus food, in markets where nothing goes to waste, in hands that repair rather than replace. Even technology carries echoes of the hunt. Our recycling plants mimic the old campsites, sorting, saving, melting, remaking. Our energy grids speak the language of efficiency once whispered over smoky fires. The zero-waste movements of today are not new ideas. They are memories resurfaced, human conscience reborn. You can almost imagine the lineage stretching back from mammoth bone to plastic spoon, from smoke pit to solar dryer, from ritual gratitude to modern sustainability. A continuous thread woven through hunger, invention, and heart. Some scholars call this instinct ecological intelligence. Others call it ancestral memory. But you don't need a term to feel it. You feel it every time you use the last of something carefully, every time you hesitate before discarding what could still serve. Picture the contrast. Once a tribe gathered around a fire, every bite shared, every bone used, every shadow thanked. Now a family gathers around a dinner table, screens glowing, food half eaten, And yet both scenes pulse with the same quiet yearning, to make meaning from sustenance, to feel connected to something larger than appetite. Because the ancient code wasn't just about meat or grain or tools. It was about respect for life, for time, for the invisible web that holds everything together. When they said, "Never waste a kill," what they really meant was, never forget that you belong to what you consume. You close your eyes, imagining the soft glow of a single firelight in the dark, its warmth steady against the cold of eternity. The hunter's laughter fades, but their lesson lingers. If they could speak now, maybe they'd whisper, "You have everything we dreamed of, comfort, warmth, abundance. But remember, those gifts came from the same earth we once walked barefoot. Use them well." The hum of the modern world softens. You can almost hear the old heartbeat beneath it, the pulse of gratitude, still strong, still waiting. The long memory of the hunt lives on in every careful act, every second thought, every moment you choose to honor what you have. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine that same fire still burning, unchanged, eternal. It warms every age, every camp, every home. Around it, countless hands reach out not to take, but to remember. The hunt is over, the circle complete. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten. The fire crackles softly now, its glow dimming into amber hush. You lie back beneath an endless sky, and for a long while the only sound is the rhythm of your own breathing. The wind moves gently through the grass, the same way it once moved through ice, jungle, and dust. It's strange, isn't it, how survival, so raw, so desperate, became something beautiful. The hunter's lesson was never just about meat or tools. It was about belonging. They understood what we're still learning, that to live well is to live attentively. You imagine them now, far away yet close, their fires flickering like stars across time. They'd recognize the heartbeat in your chest, the warmth on your skin, the way your breath slows as sleep approaches. They'd nod quietly, knowing that you too are part of their long story. The smoke rises, thins, and disappears into the night. In its fading trail, you sense the weight of everything we owe, to the land, to the creatures, to the fragile generosity of the world. The words echo once more, nothing wasted, nothing taken for granted. Your body softens into stillness. The air cools. The earth holds you just as it held them. Somewhere a distant owl calls, and the sound lulls you deeper into rest. If the hunters could see you now, warm and safe, they'd smile. Their work was not in vain. The line from their hands to yours remains unbroken. The night stretches wide, gentle, eternal.